Hey, Dane Cash here, just taking a quick moment to tell you to check out the Escape Collective fantasy game ahead of the Tour de France. Whether you're a big bike racing nerd like me, or just like watching the world's biggest race every year, it's a pretty awesome way to augment your enjoyment of the race with a very straightforward competition. You can also play with your friends. All you have to do is pick one rider for every stage of the race. You get points for how they perform, and you can only pick a rider one time throughout the race, so you got to be judicious about it. But that's pretty much it. So there's not a whole lot to learn. There is a whole lot of fun to be had, especially if you join a mini league with your friends and you can battle for bragging rights. Head over to escapecollective.com/fantasy. Check it out. Start playing. Hello and welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dane Cash, and it is almost time for the 2024 Tour de France. Cosmo, Catalano, what do you think of that?
You caught me completely off guard.
You don't have any thoughts.
I was coming up with headlines, and you give me with the what do you think of that? Man, okay.
That's fair. I did ask you to come up with a headline. We'll get to that in a second. Before we go anywhere, you're bike racing analyst extraordinaire, Cosmo Catalano. I should tell people who you are, not just say your name. I mean, because you are extraordinary at analyzing bike races. And normally, we look back at a bike race that happened over the past few days, or bike races. But this week, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look ahead to an upcoming bike race, which happens to be the biggest one in the world. It's the Tour de France. And it's days away at this point. So we are going to take a closer look at the route, all 21 stages of this race, which starts not in France, but in Italy, and ends not in Paris, as it so often does, but in Nice. And there's a lot of action to be expected between now and then, and we're just going to take a deep dive into this route. We're going to tell you what to expect, the stages that you should be paying attention to, maybe the stages that you might be able to not skip, but maybe just tune into the end. Yeah, that's what we're going to do here.
The disrespect.
Yeah, sorry. Well, let's dive in. What is your headline for
this
the route?
An unorthodox route for an unorthodox tour. This is all extremely unusual for an extremely unusual year in France, extremely unusual week in France. Everything is unusual. And so is this bike race.
It's interesting that you say that because I think it is a balanced route in that it has two time trials. It's got mountains. It's got hills. It's got a bunch of sprint stages. It's even got some gravel. There's kind of a something for everyone vibe to this tour.
Which is not the way the tour normally is.
That is often the case lately, that it is not the most balanced of races. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the first week. And the first three stages even, which take place outside of the French borders because the race starts...
The modern French borders.
Well, I guess that's true, yes. Napoleonic fans might think it was all part... Yeah, sure.
I was going to go back to even the formation of an Italian identity during the invasion of Charles the Medici Charles? Anyway.
Yeah, so that's like 500 years ago.
We're going way back. We're taking it way back.
All right, so the race starts in what is now Italy, put it that way, in Florence. And it starts not with a boring sprint stage or prologue either. There are some lumps on this route, as you can see if you are looking at the Escape Collective stage-by-stage guide to the Tour de France, which you should check out if you haven't already. Yeah, what do we think of this first stage? It looks like a day for the puncheurs, maybe. There's a climb... Not super close to the finish. It's 27K, but it's enough to drop the sprinters, I would think, and possibly bring some attacks. It's certainly going to be a tough day, not going to be a boring one to start the race.
I completely agree. It's really interesting. I am maybe not as on board with Team Puncheurs as you are. I kind of think back to last year's opening day, and I compared the two routes, and the climbs are not as hard, and the finish is, or the last climb is further from the finish. That said, definitely springboard potential, but I don't think we're going to see, Pogacar and Vingegaard throwing elbows with the Yates brothers up the road. Victor Lafay being brilliant for precisely one day before lurking off to wherever he goes after his moments of stardom.
A sore point for Kaylee Fretz's fake fantasy cycling team, by the way, because Victor Lafay has really not lived up to Kaylee's expectations.
Has Victor Lafay not lived up to our expectations, or are our expectations just wrong for Victor Lafay? I feel like he has the agency here.
That's a great French question.
To be great, he will be. This is a French race, even in Italy. That is true.
Even in Italy, yeah. So you're thinking what? Maybe a reduced sprint here?
I kind of lean in that direction, just looking at what I see. I think there are a lot of kind of borderline sprinters these days. Guys who can sprint, but aren't pure sprinters. You're not going to see them going head-to-head with Merlier or Jonathan Milan, but who are very, very fast and who can make it over these climbs. I don't know, even Michael Matthews, as much as his last Tour stage win, I believe, was at an airstrip on top of a heinously steep climb. This could be a good day for him.
I like that, yeah. All right, after the Florence to Rimini opening stage, the Grand Depart.
Rimini, where everyone hates Scientology.
Oh, no? Is that a Leah Rimini joke?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
and there's another connection on season 3 of Saved by the Bell. There's a series of episodes that take place at a summer resort where she plays the love interest of notable American amateur cyclist Mark Paul Gosselaar.
Who knew? You knew. But I didn't.
He did like a classics tour with Slipstream forever ago, back when they were Garmin Transitions.
This would be Zach from
Zach Attack, Cat 2, like legit good Cat 2 sprinter.
Everybody under the age of 30 not going to understand any of this.
Oh yeah.
That's fine. Stage 2 of the Tour de France. We're still in Italy. Cesenatico to Bologna, and it's another hilly day. Another day that might be a bit too much for the sprinters, especially because there's a double ascent of the Côte de San Luca, which I love when they combine French names for climbs with the Italian names. It's a Côte, but it's de San Luca. Anyway, 10.6%.
It's a barbarism is what it is.
Yeah, and it's a hard one. I think it's going to be another day that could have a sort of similar vibe to it, where we get maybe some late attacks, maybe they get caught, and maybe it's a reduced sprint. Are you feeling the same way about this?
I am feeling more like this is a puncheur / Pogacar does his trickster, unpredictable kind of guy thing. I like this a lot more, especially with the finishing circuit. I think that's a great way. Finishing circuit with a steep climb that isn't like massively GC altering, but has the potential for a guy to gain a couple of seconds so everyone is on edge. I think it's a really cool finish.
Yeah, we should say that these are going to be stages where you're not going to get 10 minutes, but you certainly could lose 10 minutes. And also you could get enough time to be in the jersey. And that's going to change the whole course of the race just because you got the jersey. Like 4 seconds here matters a lot. Even if it doesn't really matter in the final standings per se, it might matter because you're suddenly tasked with chasing down the breakaway because everyone expects that when you're wearing yellow, obviously. All right, that's stage 2.
It's also the first day of French elections. And it goes through Ravenna, where the Roman emperors moved when it became no longer sustainable to protect Rome. So maybe there's some parallels there.
I really love that this version of Cosmo is awesome.
Well, we're going to get to a point where there's just sprint day, and we're going to say sprint day. So I want to have something interesting.
No, that's good. Ravenna, for the nerds out there, was an inspiration for Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings, I believe, because of that same reason.
I believe it.
Romans. All right, moving on to Plaisance to Turin, the final stage that's fully within Italy. This will be a sprint stage, one would think, because there are climbs on the menu, but there's really nothing hard and nothing very close to the finish. Pretty flat. It's the kind of day that we're going to see the fast riders. And it's a long straightaway at the end. Should be a big, high-speed finish.
It's interesting. These Euros started in Turin with a much more dynamic and unpredictable finish, and it delivered. But this is definitely not that. I agree. Total sprint day.
I mean, it's funny how when we think of a place, we might think of there being a certain terrain around it. But like you could kind of design a race to look like anything, anywhere. If you just find the flat roads or find the hilly roads. They found some hilly roads for stage 4, which takes the race.
Good segue.
Thank you. Takes the race into France from Pinerolo, which I feel like I'm going to say Pinarello at some point, but I didn't do it there, and I'm proud of myself. From Pinerolo to Valois. And they go over, 3 pretty tough climbs. None of them all that steep. All of them, 2 of them, quite long. Finishing with the Galibier and then a descent to the line. The Galibier is the second highest climb at this year's tour. It is the Souvenir Henri de Grange, and I had always thought that was given to the highest climb at the tour. Apparently not. There is a higher climb at this year's tour. We'll get to that later. In any case, stage 4, we already have the Galibier. We already have some very, very high climbs, 2,600 meters for the Galibier. That is altitude. Not the hardest climbs in terms of the gradient, but they are hard enough, certainly, to put GC riders into some discomfort.
Yeah, I almost feel like someone's kind of taking the piss with this stage. They have 2 very famous climbs that they take in the easy direction. And like you said, they're not super duper hard. It's a very short day. So I could imagine a lot of it kind of being more neutral at the beginning. And that, I will say that even in the easy direction, the Galibier is huge, and they kind of undersell it here because they're counting it out from Briançon, which is way down the river valley. So the first half, 2/3 of this climb is like 3%, and then they come out of the valley. They go up a real mountain climb for 10 kilometers, something like that, 8 kilometers at like 7%. So it's still a pretty good sized climb. The thing is, it's a long way from the finish still, almost 20 kilometers. I don't know. I think GC teams are going to be ready for it, but I don't think this is going to be a big decider for the top 20 guys in the race.
It is downhill all the way to the line, so there is it is likely that if you have a big gap over the top, you're going to keep it. It's not like they have a long flat section, but I think I agree that we're not going to see the Tour de France 1 here. I do think it's going to be an important stage, though. I don't think it's going to be nothing. I also think it's going to be great for viewers to see what kind of shape Jonas Vingegaard is in at this point of the tour, because it's just 4 stages in, and it is a stage that goes to 2,600 meters.
It's a good point. The elevation is super high for being this early, but they go back down afterward. So
they do, yeah. They do then head down back to sprinter territory. Stage 5 looks like a day for the fast finishers, and there are some curves in the finale, so possibly some intrigue, but I do think this is going to be a pretty clear-cut sprint day. Do you agree?
I agree.
Moving on to stage 6, an even clearer cut sprint day. This is a very flat stage. Fortunately, it's not too long, but it is going to be a day where the commentators will have to do some deep dives into the local cuisine of Burgundy, Dijon, because there's not going to be a whole lot else going on, I wouldn't think.
I feel slightly attacked on July 4th, known for its ketchup and plain yellow mustard, to be finishing in Dijon. This is a slight to Americans everywhere.
We should, like, Heinz Ketchup be sponsoring this stage, or stage 7. It's time for a TT. It's a 25.3 kilometer TT. It's got a lump in it. It's not really a climber's TT, though. It's a power TT. It's a guy. The guys who are going to do well here are going to be the ones who can time trial well. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think they're kind of knowing what the other TT looks like. I think this is kind of maybe an apology or hey, here's your chance, guys, to do your TT thing, because the other one is on the last day, and we'll talk about it more, but also pretty GC relevant. This isn't even twisty. Like, maybe I'm missing something looking at the map, but it really seems like pedal the bike as hard as you can pedal the bike in a relatively straight line, make a couple 90-degree turns every so often, and that's it. So, pure power.
I also think, given where it is in the race, that it might be the first time we see one of the really big GC riders take over the lead. We might not have seen that yet because there weren't that many hard climbs leading up to this, but knowing how good Tadej Pogacar and Remco Evenepoel and Primož Roglic and Jonas Vingegaard are at time trialing, this could be their time. to take over yellow. Or maybe Tadej Pogacar will be in yellow from day 1 to day 21. All right, we'll talk about that later. Stage 8. It's a hilly one. It's a day that maybe could be a sprint, but I would think all of the up and down, even if none of it's all that hard, will make it a breakaway kind of day or a classics rider kind of day.
What's the cumulative elevation on this? Because it's like I think this is so hard to read.
It is.
This is like looking at a profile on Strava from Iowa, and you're like, oh, that's flat, and then you get to ride it, and you're just up and down 100, 200 foot rollers all day long. Well, 100 foot rollers all day long. And I agree. I lean sprint, if only because that's how things tend to go. But it is tough to tell without riding the route.
Now, interestingly enough, the ASO has decided that it is a flat stage. They word it as a flat stage. I believe it says there's roughly 2,400 meters of climbing on this stage, which is not nothing for a flat, quote unquote, flat stage.
No, that's a lot.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
I would consider that even over almost 200 kilometers. I would consider that a long 180 kilometers.
All right, stage 9, Intrigue. The last day before the first rest day. So we will take a breather here right after this. But first, gravel. It's time for gravel. What do you think of stage 9?
I think it's brilliant. I really love this. I think the ASO is doing gravel right, in quotation marks, at least as far as professional road racing goes. I think they did a really good job getting some vineyard roads, some gravel roads into Paris Tour, and I think they kind of applied that learning here. They really, they kind of ease into it, and then they come fast and furious. They're close to the end of the race. They're not just there for show. I don't think this is going to be quite as good as what we saw in the women's tour a few years ago, where we had just a truly outstanding gravel stage. I am a little worried that because this comes right ahead of the rest day, and after so much, like there hasn't been a big stamp your authority on the race kind of GC day, and I think you don't, without an order to kind of rebel against, there's less room for riders to try and take the chance and blow up the race on this. We saw on this Giro a similar, I think it was stage 6, they had kind of a mini Strade Bianche, and the stage battle was excellent, but the rest of the race was basically unaffected. And I think it was a similar calculation where everybody had their teams together at the front, they were ready for something to happen, and just no one wanted to make the investment because it didn't seem like they could make it stick.
Yeah, I think that's a risk. There are 14 gravel sectors, which is a lot. And also, the route is hilly, so that's nice. It's not just like a flat but gravelly race. It's going to be...
It's hilly and it's wooded, too. It's very... I was looking at trying to see if there's any potential for crosswinds, because those can be pretty brutal if you have to deal with going straight on the gravel and being in an echelon, etc. But it seemed like it was really more kind of wood roads versus the open stuff you see at Strade Bianche. Could be wrong. I'm looking at it on Google Maps. So,
in any case, classic style, I would say, this route. And I think those are the riders who are going to shine here on the gravel. The Chemin Blanc, as they are known in France, as opposed to the Strade Bianche. And then a rest day. Take a breather. The Peloton gets to take their first of 2 rest days. All right, those first 9 stages. What are your takeaways so far from the race that we were?
Well, I tipped my hand a little bit when I was talking about stage 9, in that it's pretty open, right? There isn't, even with the Galibier on stage 4, I don't see anything that is guaranteed GC reshuffle. There's lots of opportunities, but there isn't, something you put a big red circle around on the calendar and say, we're gunning for this. And I think that can be good, and I think that can be bad, and it really depends on how the riders take it on. And if this were last year, I would say that Pogacar would be doing what Pogacar did last year, where he tried to steal whatever time he could, whenever he could. Now he's coming in maybe as something of a favorite, given Vingegaard's altered preparation and his dominance at the Giro. And so I don't know if we're going to see that. But certainly the opportunity is there.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's really going to be... I kind of hate this. I don't like framing things as it's up to the riders because so often really the route is.
It's literally every time. They could just sit down and protest every stage.
Sure,
like,
they can.
Do the race.
And yet so often the route pretty much, if you look at the route, you can often figure out what's going to happen. However, I think you're right. In this particular instance, it is kind of tricky to say. But the first week to me, especially because we do have the Galibier relatively early on, and those first 2 stages are actually quite interesting. I like it. I like the first 9 days. And I'm saying this now to set up when I gripe about the second week here.
Sprint day.
Yeah, there will be some griping. But for
Any
now...
uphill finishes yet so far? No? Any coming up soon? Are there? We'll find out.
Let's take a break. Okay, we're back to it. Stage 10. It's a sprint day. From Orléans to Saint-Amand-de-Montrond. Forgive me with the French, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be a sprint day. There are some corners in the finale, so it could be an interesting sprint, but I don't really see much chance of anything else happening here. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes, this is sort of the part where I'm saying sprint day, except
we do get
this next stage.
Stage 11 looks very much like a breakaway friendly kind of day. It's got that kind of lots of lumpy stuff, nothing super hard. Sprinters teams won't want anything to do with it, but I don't think Tadej Pogačar is gonna care too much. And
I think this is a double race day. I think we are 12 stages into the race now. We have not had an uphill finish. We've had a kind of short, more power-friendly time trial. I think someone's going to want to do something here. I agree. It's almost certainly going to be a breakaway day. It's one of the longer of the tour. But I think we may kind of get a double race where the breakaway fights it out, and then, 7 minutes later, someone in the GC shoots their shot, and maybe it shakes things up. I don't know. Even if they do, I don't think it's going to be minutes. I think it's going to be a couple seconds.
Right. Yeah. They're short climbs, but they are quite difficult. So the final climb, not super hard, but the 3 preceding climbs, the Col de Néron, the Puy-Marie Pas de Peyroll, and the Col de Pertus. I just want to say it in Latin. Anyway, whatever that is, that trio of climbs, they're all quite steep. That is going to be the kind of gradient that will possibly spring attacks, both like you're saying from the break and the GC riders. In any case, the stage I do think is going to be very much for the break. Stage 12, it's a sprint day. Yep. It's 200 plus K, which I don't love.
Are there even good crosswind sections?
There are. I will say this is one of those stages, like so many other stages at the Tour and every other race, where like the profile is. It's hard to really judge whether there are significant climbs or not beforehand. Like, are these lumps in the road actually that big of a deal? I think this is. I don't know. I guess it's possible that we could see classics riders try their luck here. Yeah.
I was just thinking of something to try and shake it up. It's just, this not coastal. I don't think there's any like internal plains like you get in Spain where you have these huge, heavy, windy days.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know that France has that.
Or also the United States, for that matter.
Yeah, the Front Range.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I learned to ride in crosswinds.
The next day, not a whole lot to suggest it won't be a sprint heading into Po, a place that quite often has non-sprints, but this one
knows.
Yeah.
Po is like the abandon all hope, you who enter here sign. And when you're in Po, something is going to happen or has happened.
Often outside of the race.
Oh, yes, that too. That too.
But the race itself should be a sprint day, the one into Po. Leaving Po, however, we finally have non-sprinter action. A day that will probably be the first really big GC battle of this race. It's pretty flat to start as they leave Po and head into the Pyrenees, but then they do Tourmalet, Orquet d'Ancizan, and the Saint-Lary-Soulan climb, which that trio is hard. The Tourmalet or category climb, legendary climb. And the Saint-Lary-Soulan climb is very hard, especially after the accumulated, climbing on the day.
I would say it's rated as an OR category, and I agree with that given the previous terrain. But like on paper, it is not the most devastating climb you could see at the end of a Tour de France stage.
Yeah. That's true. It's one of those. It's the accumulated thing I think that makes it an ore category, and I do think with the Tourmalet.
If you said go ride a 10.5K climb at 8%, I'd be like, that sounds like a nice casual climbing day. Back when I lived near bigger mountains.
I don't know. I live near big mountains. That sounds like a hard climbing day for me,
really?
But I don't know that it's a hard climbing day for them. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, stage 15, another climby kind of day, and an interesting one because there's 3 first category climbs in the first third of the stage, and then there's this long stretch where there's no climbing really, and then they do another Cat 1, an uncategorized climb, and then an ore category climb to the finish. This is one of those days where I think the best way to describe it is to just say, go look at the stage profile. I think it's a breakaway day for the stage. I don't know. There's a lot of climbing though, and it's a accumulated difficult stage, but none of the climbs themselves are all that brutal. I don't know. Maybe the Col d'Agny, the penultimate climb is pretty hard, like category 1. One thing I'll note, I actually really like the way this stage starts. So they are climbing the Pays Resort from immediately. They start right away, which means that if a break gets clear, it's going to be climbers. And I kind of like that.
Yes, I agree. I think, and in fact, I think this actually is the right way to start a breakaway-friendly stage like this, where you have a group of. It's not like any old schmo can get in the break on this stage, and I think a lot of any old schmoes. Not that anyone in the peloton is really a schmo, but I think a lot of them are going to get together and roadblock once they think a suitable break has gone clear and make it so that they at least get over this first climb of the day before they start going out the back, which is, I don't know if you'd call it a tour tradition, but I think it's something that I really like about cycling, where people always talk about safety in numbers in the autobus, and it's kind of like it's safety in numbers throughout the whole day. Everybody is working for survival for the most part throughout this race.
When you have a hard climb or 3 of them this early, there is that aspect. Absolutely. All right. So that 15th stage is the last stage before the second rest day. So we go into rest day number 2 with a pretty tough GC stage and on the back of another tough GC stage. However, it's not the hardest first 2 weeks we've seen. Put it that way.
Yeah, there's 2 mountaintop finishes and, some spoilers upcoming, but there's not a whole lot else GC-wise in this race. This is the toughest, I think the toughest stuff we're going to see in terms of numbers anyway.
Yeah, I would imagine the altitude that they climb on stage 19 will make that a pretty big one. But yeah,
it's high, but it's not. It's only 144K. The last climb I think is rated as a Cat 1, which I don't think I agree with, given the fact that it's stage 19 and 2,000 feet above sea level, or 2,000 meters above sea level. But at the same time, it's not. I don't know. I was expecting, having seen nothing until those 2 hilltop finishes at the end of the second week, to get a really rough backloaded finish to this race. And I don't know that it's there. It's still, there's more mountains. They go into the Alps.
Yeah. I think we should say, I don't know that that to me is not necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen a lot of really hard course designs that didn't make for a better race necessarily. When you throw in, sometimes it actually makes it worse, because if one rider is so much better than everyone else that they are constantly winning those stages by 5 minutes, then the end of the race there's no suspense at all. Right. So that might help.
I feel like this is the heart of the climbing. I don't know. I'm of 2 minds about it. I just felt like when I was looking through, I was kind of huh. But we're talking about the third week as much as we're talking about the second. So.
All right, let's talk about the third week then. Let's just get into it. The third week does start with yet another sprint stage, which, what else is there to say? It could be hot because it's in southern France, and there is a cool Roman amphitheater in the finishing city, so that's worth knowing. And hopefully that will get you through the 4 or 5 hours of flat racing. to the finish. Stage 17, another interesting uphill, breakaway friendly kind of day. It is an uphill finish, but it is not a particularly steep finish. The Col du Noyer near the finish could be a launching point because it's pretty tough. It's Cat 1 climb. It's short but steep. Yeah, another breakaway friendly day. There's a couple of these days here where we could see a double breakaway and GC battle. I don't know.
I kind of feel like it looks a lot like what was the previous stage with the little baby hilltop finish after the climbing?
I had the exact same thought.
Yep.
It's, what was that, stage 11?
Yeah, you just went by it.
Same thought. Stage 18, yet another like up and down breakaway friendly kind of day. Nothing here is going to be hard enough for a GC battle. However, I think it is probably too hard for the sprinters. Fair bit of climbing on the day from Gap to Barcelonnette. Yeah, this looks to me like textbook breakaway kind of day.
Unless there's a tight battle for the green jersey, and even then, that might actually make it more of a breakaway day, because then you can just get that green jersey battle, give it to someone else, and save it for another day.
It could also be one of those days where they race really hard to that intermediate sprint, and then that's when the break
Throw
goes.
the anchor out. Cool. See you guys back at the bus.
All right, stage 19. This is a day with some GC implications. No need for qualifiers here. There are 2 or category climbs. The second one, La Bonnette, is the highest climb in the race, 2,800 meters. And then they climb to the Isola 2000 ski station. The altitude, the length, the accumulated climbing, it's a GC day for sure. We can, however, probably point out that none of these climbs is super steep.
The thing that I've already said, I think this is less hard than the previous tour uphill finishes in the Pyrenees. I am slightly anxious about it given the 2019 tour, where there was a similar day of just a lot of elevation, and like a freak thunderstorm rolled through.
That did happen.
A bunch of hail on the course, and that was the end of the Tour GC right there. Julian Alaphilippe never really lost the yellow jersey. He just had to give it to Egan Bernal, and he was going to. There's no question about that. But at the same time, it's a crummy way to end a bike race, or to change a GC bike race. I'm hoping that they are maybe a little more on their toes about being able to reroute or reschedule or deal with that sort of high intensity weather, which I think is becoming inevitably more frequent. I am a huge fan of elevation. I think there's something that you get both as a spectator and as a racer that you don't get without it. And I think that the race should absolutely go there. I just think they gotta be ready for it.
So it's 2,800 meters, which if you are an American person,
freedom units.
If you're using freedom units, that is about 9,100, over 9,100 feet, 9,100 feet, which is very high. The Alps, the Pyrenees, there are some very high climbs, but you don't actually very frequently get to altitudes at the Tour de France and the Giro, for that matter, that are comparable to like where you might go ride in Colorado, for instance. Like I can go ride to a lot of the climbs at the Tour de France, that elevation, pretty easily. This one I have to climb pretty high. I can get there, but it's a pretty long climb to get to 9,000 feet. That's way up there, and it can really have an impact on people, on human beings, athletes, and I think it's something that we don't that frequently see. I don't know that we have really seen riders put to the limit like this, the big names, that frequently. So this will be really interesting to watch. All right, one more climbing day at the 2024 Tour de France. It's stage 20. This is unsurprisingly, because it starts in Nice, it's very much like a Paris-Nice kind of stage. You get this a lot in Paris-Nice, where you get several Cat 1 or Cat 2 climbs on a short stage. And that's exactly what they're doing here. It's Cat 2, Cat 1, Cat 1, Cat 1. It ends on the Cat 1. And actually, as far as the uphill finishes in this Tour de France go, this is one of the toughest ones on here on stage 20. 15.7K, 7.1%. This is the last climb of the last hard climb of the tour. There actually is a climb at the final TT. Two climbs. But the last mass start climb of this race. And just in case it hasn't been decided yet, this is not going to be easy.
This is another very short day. This is 132 kilometers, all up and down. I don't think there's any appreciable flat riding. I think it's going to be really hard. Unless the GC is already settled, I think it's going to get raced very aggressively. I think even if people don't plan to attack, they want to look like they plan to attack, or they want to keep the pace up so that things don't get out of hand. I kind of hope that it's close. I always hope that it's close, right? Who wants a lopsided race?
Yeah.
But in particular, I think that having this day, this short, this intense, could be very, very cool racing if all the marbles are still to play for.
Yeah, and then that's your last mass start day, because the final stage, I guess I kind of already made this joke in the written preview I did, so I won't do it again. We're not going to Paris. We're going to Nice. It's not the Champs-Élysées. It's a time trial. Stage 21 of the 2024 Tour de France is a time trial. And it's actually
literally the last day, not the last day before Paris or some promenade stage.
Right. It's not a stage where we headline writers will have to say things like all but one at the end. If you are the GC leader at the end of the stage, you have actually won the Tour de France. And it's actually kind of a hard time trial. There is a
kind of.
It's a hard time trial.
This is hard.
Yeah, it's a hard time trial. There you go.
This is longer than the other time trial with a Cat 2 climb in it. And it's up and down and up again and down, and then a little bit more flat coming back into the city.
There's no categorization on the Col d'Ez, but they do go up and over a pretty well-known tough climb. It's relatively short the way they're doing it here, but it's not nothing.
No. This is whoever made the profile for this stage should be fired, or at least sent to remedial math. Remedial math.
For those who are unused to looking at profiles of bike races, the fun thing or the maddening thing, depending on your perspective, is that the y-axis is all over the place. And if you want to make a stage look really hard, you can. And if you want to make it look not hard, you could do that too. It's kind of up to you. And this is a stage that if you just look at it, it's like, it looks pretty flat. But it's not flat, actually. It's pretty hard. This is a tough day.
I mean, this is... I think the last time they had a final day time trial was 1989. Am I wrong about that? When Greg LeMond won?
That's what comes immediately to mind for me. Nothing else comes to mind. If there's a listener out there who knows better than us, please tell us, because that's what I think.
And that was a little zip into Paris, right? It wasn't so much that it was an amazing win, but it was particularly amazing because the stage, while it was a time trial, was not expected to be decisive. And this is a very decisive looking day.
Yeah.
This is, on a mass start climb twice this size, you can play all sorts of tricks with yourself. You can have your team kind of lead you in on another guy's wheel. In a time trial, like, as anybody who's tried to poach Strava KOMs or whatever knows, like, it is a totally different battle. And you could be at 98% and lose the Tour de France because the guy you're racing against is at 100%. Like, that is the sort of closeness in combat that this separated individual start race paradoxically provides.
And we should remind people that last year's tour was extremely close until the last week or so. Maybe we'll get that again. It needs to be close for this to be decisive. Because if a rider has a 3-minute advantage, I don't think they're giving it up on this TT. But if it's only a minute, then that could happen.
How much time did Pogačar lose in the TT last year?
I think it was a minute and a half.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's more potential here than there was there.
Yeah.
And a minute and a half's a long time.
Yeah. Yep. And Primož Roglič will tell you.
Yes, he will.
That being a very good time trialist, a very, very good time trialist, doesn't make you immune to having somebody else put a huge chunk of time into you, overhaul you, and beat you at the Tour de France. Because that's exactly what happened to Primož Roglič, who is an extremely good time trialist, but not good enough for Tadej Pogačar not to beat him in Tadej's first Tour win. And that's it. 21 stages of the Tour de France. It will enter the TT. If it's still close, it's going to be a pretty fascinating battle. It's not the kind of TT that will favor only the Stefan Kungs of the world, for instance. It will favor the guys like Pogačar, Vingegaard for the stage win, in addition to being important for their GC implications. It will be a stage win that will probably come from a GC rider, I would guess. And yeah, if you're winning the race after this, you don't have to stay upright on that final processional stage into Paris as you clink glasses. That's it. You have won. There's no more. Tour de France over after this. All right, all told, what do you think? What are your takeaways? You got one or two big overarching thoughts?
Like I said, I think it's really unusual. I think it's very hard to predict and very hard to control. And I think that plays into some riders' hands a little more than others. I think the past couple of years we've seen someone kind of come at this like a chaos monkey and somebody come at it like they're playing chess and maybe too literally executed in a series of advertisements where his teammates are moving literal chess pieces around. But yeah, I think it is a very appropriate Tour de France for this year and for this kind of broader whatever it is that we're going through, geopolitically and otherwise. I think this is cool. I think it's really bold that they shook this up. I don't know 100% that it's going to work out. But, there's just a lot going on in France this summer. There's an Olympic Games coming up hot on the heels of the Tour. One of the reasons we're not in Paris. And I'm really looking forward to it. People say, may you live in interesting times as an insult, but this may be one benefit of having interesting times to live in.
Yeah, I mean, just in case you live under a rock, we are starting the Tour a week early this year because of the Olympics. And as we've mentioned several times, we're not finishing in Paris. They are not finishing in Paris for that reason. I'm of two minds. I will say I think there are too many sprint stages. I think there should be 3 fewer. We really don't need this many.
And we could be misreading some of those.
Yeah, that's possible.
We have said that we're not totally sure if we're thinking
some of them. Although there was one or two also where I maybe thought. In any case, maybe more will be sprint stages, maybe fewer will be sprint stages, but it's 7 or 8, and that's too many, I think. However, it will be cool to see Cavendish have all those opportunities to break or set a new record. That would be obviously a big deal. And then other than that gripe, I really like the lack of insanely steep, obviously going to destroy everybody climbs, because we've seen a lot of races, Grand Tours, that have those, and they don't necessarily make good racing. So I think it's a cool route. I think the gravel stage has a lot of potential. Hopefully it will end up a bit more intriguing from a GC perspective than the one at the Giro, although as you point out that the stage battle was great at the Giro. But I think all told, I like this route. I like that it has 2 TTs. I love that it has no team time trials. Obviously, I love that. And I think your winner is going to be, as it should be, a very balanced rider. There's a lot of up and down. Got to be good at going up and descending. Enough time trials and gravel to keep the climbers honest. Yeah, all told, I actually really like this route. All right, let's close out our show in your favorite way. So there will be
means that ironically.
That's true. There will be plenty more analysis of who will win the Tour over at escapecollective.com. We will do a deep dive into all that stuff. But right here, I want to know, Cosmo Catalano, who you think is going to win the 2024 Tour de France.
Well, I obviously have to pick Tadej Pogačar, right? If for no other reason than Denmark banned spicy food for being too spicy.
What?
And I can't have that.
Okay.
Yeah, there was some pepper was sort of arbitrarily chosen as being the health risk and banned from Denmark.
It makes me want to not say what I'm going to say and pick. I mean, that changes. Look, I'm reading about it right now. Buldak ramen noodles have been banned for being dangerously spicy. Wow. That alone makes me not want to say Jonas Vingegaard. Yeah, wow.
For real, though, I think Pogacar's had a really good run in. I think it's gone about as well as it could. Last year, he had a little broken hand kind of thing. Didn't have that this year. Really looked as good as he's ever looked in basically all the races he's done. Vingegaard had some terrible luck. His team has also had some terrible luck. None of that means he's not going to be ready, that his team's not going to be ready. But, you know, it's a big deal preparing for this Tour de France. And he has not prepared as well as he, I think, needs to.
I think I'm going to say Jonas Vingegaard. Pogacar is the bookie's favorite. He's not a heavy favorite, but he is the favorite. I think there's plenty of reasons for that, but I think that Vingegaard has potential to be significantly better, and I think that he has time to work his way into that form. I think that his preparation being derailed is about as bad as racing the Giro before the Tour. I think people are not making enough of the fact that Tadej Pogacar is trying the Giro Tour double, which has not been done in 30 years. And it's really, really hard.
But it's not like he's doing it on a lark, right? He's had this plan in place.
True.
Like this is the strategy. I'd imagine that he spoke with some trainers, some people who know his physical profile, they're close to his numbers, who're saying, you know what you might try?
Yeah.
Because you seem to have this, you look like the strongest rider, and then on the days when you're not, like, you get smashed.
Yeah.
And how do we figure out how to better prepare you for those days, make it so you don't have those days? And maybe the Giro is the way to do that. I don't know. I agree. It would not be my personal choice, at least not right away, if you said, hey, what's a great tour prep? But, you know, he's had a really smooth... everything has seemed to go right.
It has, yeah. I want to, real quick, I also want to say that I believe in Primož Roglic's chances as well. And I don't think it's just Pogacar versus Vingegaard. I really think Roglic is a legit contender. I don't necessarily think the same of Remco Evenepoel, maybe the fourth name here. But I see Roglic as a real threat for Pogacar, and unlike Pogacar, he has not raced the Giro. We will not have long to wait to see how these various riders are doing. By the next show, we will have at least a few stages in the bag, which is very exciting. In the meantime, hope you have a chance to watch the first few stages of the Tour de France, and of course, check out all of the other podcasts on the Escape Collective Network, which you'll know this now because of where you are listening. You have to go seek them out in their own channels. There's really no point in announcing that on this show because you already know that if you're listening. That's where you find our show. But
they might not know it, but they will have already found it.
They will have already found us, yeah. And if you're wondering, okay, how do I now listen to placeholders? Well, go find that channel or go find the Geek Warning channel, whatever it is you're looking for. We just have split stuff out into their own channels now, and you can go find them where they are if you want to go listen to them. With that, I think that's it for our tour route preview. Stay tuned to the Escape Podcast Network for more. Obviously, head to escapecollective.com for all of our pre-race analysis. We got lots more coming this week. And if you're not a member of Escape Collective, go sign up and become one, because there's literally not a better time in the year to do it. It's Tour de France time. Now's the perfect time. Head on over to escapecollective.com. Check it out. Sign up. All that good stuff. We'd love your support. We need your support. We love it and we need it. And with that, I'm Dane Cash. And who are you? What was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano. And that was the How the Race Was Won podcast.